when we are sitting here trying to push things on our children that aren't really for them, that's probably going to promote something else. Resentment and anger, or trying to get away. That's maybe why sometimes children leave before it's time, is that pressure.
I'm Dean Cullinane, and you're listening to Why They Did That, a show that explores the motivations of biblical characters and how their choices can guide yours. Margaret Gallant, and don't let anyone tell you differently, is a hero. What's the definition of a hero? A hero is a person who is admired for their courage, their outstanding achievements, and their noble qualities. So let's start from the top. Courage is an understatement. This woman is brave, a lioness, never afraid to stand up and be heard regardless of who's in the room. She knows who she is, and more importantly, she knows who her savior is, and she's not afraid to let people know that either. Her outstanding achievements, simple. Just look at her home. Look at what she has built alongside her husband. 3 wonderfully fantastic children, Bailey, Mackenzie, and R.D., I remember that last name, who are a testimony to their faithfulness and their sacrifice as parents. Nothing speaks louder to the value of the gospel than a well-ordered family whose foundations are laid on the principles of heaven. And noble qualities, well, let's just say if her passport wasn't blue, she could probably have been the Queen of England someday. She exudes class and respect and honor. The way I'm going on, you'd think Margaret Gallant was someone hidden in the New Testament, but no, she's just a woman that I admire greatly, and I'm chuffed to have her join us and be one of our guests on Why They Did That. We sat down to discuss the most difficult of topics, raising children, which has another word, a better synonym, if you will, sacrifice. No one knows that sacrifice, perhaps aside from Mary, the mother of Jesus, as much as Hanna does. Desperate for a child, yet barren, she prayed one of the most famous prayers in all of Scripture, and the Lord wasted no time in blessing her with a child, the prophet Samuel. Yet it's the contents of this prayer that are fascinating. She promises God that if he would give her a child, she would give him straight back. Whatever is the purpose of that, you may wonder. And that, my friends, is the very heart of what Christian parenting is all about.
If this was a story of today, Hanna would have been introduced by maybe another identity.
Right.
Lawyer, banker, nurse, realtor, teacher.
But she's not.
No, she's not. So we kind of have to stop and examine this story a little bit. This only states that Hanna had no children.
Right. That's the introduction that we're given.
Yes. So, then it goes on a little later, and it says that her adversary, which is the other wife, Hanna, provoked her sore for her to make her fret. So she's trying to irritate her because she had children and Hanna had none.
You can imagine that home is pretty problematic.
Yeah.
Whenever you hear the other wife, it's just like, oops.
Correct. Yeah, that's a big problem. There's actually bullying going on in this family. Yeah. So I look back on this. What is this motherhood thing? Because in this day and age, we as women, we can be something other than a mother.
Right.
So we kind of have to look at this whole thing of motherhood. So in the Jewish culture, it was either you're blessed because you have children, or you're not blessed.
And this blessing, I mean, the fact that Hannah is barren, I think we're led to believe, if it doesn't say so explicitly, that she was the first wife, or she's at least the one that Elkanah loves the most, but she is barren. And when I think back to the kind of genesis of this promise, it's that Abraham was promised his seed would, bless the entire world. He would be the father of nations. But Sarah was barren. She couldn't really have a child. And so there's a clear link, I think, to the fulfillment of that promise being one that requires faith on the part of the mother. We know that with Sarah, she was reaching almost a century in terms of her age. But with Hannah, that's not the case. But she's still almost, as Sarah has Hagar, Hannah has Peninnah, who's there to kind of a visual representation of what she's not. And that must be hard.
Yes. She desperately wants to be a mother. And her identity is Hannah has no children.
Right.
And in verse 8, it says that her husband, he comes to her and says, "Why weepest thou, and why eatest thou not? And why is thy heart grieved? Am I not better to thee than my 10 sons?" So he's even saying, "Well, what's the problem? I'm treating you well."
Right.
But she's depressed.
Yeah, I don't think he gets it.
No.
It's perhaps innocently of himself, but his duty, in a sense, has been fulfilled. He has a seed that's going to continue his line. The blessing of Abraham has flown through him, but from Hannah's perspective, as you said, it's leading her to a dark place.
Yeah. Well, he thinks he did solve the problem,
right,
by bringing in another woman.
Yeah.
But this is not solving the problem for her,
right,
because she has to have a child to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
And she by the thing with her not eating and not sleeping, those are sure signs of depression.
Right.
So we have a young lady who's depressed and she's being bullied. So it's quite interesting to see what she does, because some people in their depression, they just get in bed and stay there, or they hide, they isolate.
Most people probably.
She doesn't do that, which is really impressive to me. What she does is she cries out to the Lord. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it when you jump forward and think of who Samuel becomes, if you didn't know who Hannah was,
right,
you'd have this picture of a woman who her complete reliance was on God.
Right.
And for me, that is such a testament to, because we know what an issue depression or other things that harm your mental health can be, and how easy it is to lose God in those situations, and to forget your identity and to wallow in self-pity and just to look completely inward. But yet here we have a woman who in her darkest times knows that the best thing for her is to look up and to call out.
Right.
And I think that's inspiring.
It's actually a humility too, that she does. She goes to somebody else and she cries out. How many times do we cry out?
Right.
And we say, "God, I will do this, or I will be this, or I will, take care of this if you will give me what I want." And she basically did that. She said, if you give me a man child, I will give him right back to you.
Right. And for me, what that almost says is, it is about, I don't want to paint a selfish picture of Hannah here, but it seems to be less so about her possessing a child physically, and more so about her having had the experience of being a mother, because she's willing to give the child up.
That's interesting.
She just wants that blessing to be hers, and I think to experience the blessing of motherhood.
Well, and it goes back to identity.
Right.
She wants that identity.
Yeah.
She wants to be known as Hannah that had a child, a man child at that, not just Hannah that had no children. So it's really, it does look like it's selfish thing, but she's doing a very unselfish thing
Right.
with that.
By offering him up. And how do you kind of interpret or feel about the promise that she's making to God and making promises to God?
Well, I think that it actually it's really important that you follow through with that. So it shows me something about her that she's just not going to frivolously say that. And then I don't know. I know many times we do that.
Yeah.
We say, "Hey God, if you get me through this day, I'm going to do that." I've done that. I know that other people probably have.
They have.
So I think it's typical.
Yeah. And how often if that thing we asked for is received, we just forget God had anything to do with it.
Correct. We just move right on.
Right. I remember a time when, you have those faithful church members that if they see you in the wrong, they just feel no way about going up to you and putting their arm around the shoulder, if you even get that, and just giving you a friendly rebuke. I remember there was a time when I had committed to doing something in church. I had given my word, and they had, how would I put this? The people had very much so demonstrated how important a job this was. And I gave them my word. I was going to do this well. And it became like a kind of, it was obviously, being in church, it was of a spiritual nature. And so I was promising to them and to God that I was going to be able to do this thing, and that I would. And I didn't. Failed. Let them down. Let everyone down. And I remember this elderly, grandmotherly figure within the church came to me, and she was like, "Dean, you really shouldn't make promises that you can't keep." I was like, yes, you're right. I shouldn't. And she shared with me a passage in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, which I'm just going to read briefly. Okay. But I've never forgotten these verses. It says from verse 2, and I'm reading from the English Standard Version: "Be careful when you make promises to God. Be careful about what you say to him. Don't let your feelings cause you to speak too soon. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so you need to only say a few things to him." And he says, "This saying is true. Bad dreams come from too many worries, and too many words come from the mouth of a fool."
Wow.
And she's reading this, I'm thinking, okay, you can stop now. And then she says, "If you make a promise to God, keep your promise. Don't be slow to do what you have promised. God is not happy with fools. Give God what you promised to give him. It is better to promise nothing than to promise something and not be able to do it."
That's huge.
I was just like, whoa, ton of bricks. But I really felt like the Spirit of the Lord was speaking to me through her. And if my wife was here today, she could attest that I'm still not as much a man of a word as I would like to be. But one thing it definitely did for me is I stopped making promises to God. And I started moving away from a relationship that was, I guess, transactional.
Yeah.
Just based on I gave you my word and therefore I have to keep it. And more so based on my desire to serve him out of love rather than obligation.
But that's healthy. That's very good.
Yeah.
I think that Hannah's story touches me in the fact that the identity of being a mother, she cried out to the Lord, and she says, "I'm going to give back to you the gift that you gave to me." And I think that's the definition of motherhood. But I'll go one step further.
Right.
I think that's the definition of womanhood.
Right.
And then I'll go one step further to include you.
Appreciate it.
I think that's the definition of humankind, that we are to give back our lives to God. And I think that's what she showed us in this story. And I think it shows me more and more in my life, an example of some things that have happened. I think by giving our lives to God, gives him the opportunity to really start showing us what he can do through us.
Yeah, and in this act of, offering up the son that she has so long wanted, for me, that really is a beautiful symbol of what parenthood is, in that it is actually, it's seeing the fact that, how do I put this? I think as a parent, I'm not one yet, but given my experience with parents, it can be very easy for parents to try and live their dreams through their children.
Yes.
Naturally, there's things in life that we just didn't get to achieve. And for many people, especially mothers, that's because they gave up their dreams to be mothers. And so it's natural that, you still want to do a few things, but you're not able to anymore, whether it be because of age or whatever.
Or it could be also of how our lives were, and we want something better.
Right, exactly.
So,
or something different.
Yeah.
And so, we just follow that trend and push things onto our children and expect that they become something great, or they must have a certain occupation, or they must earn a certain amount.
They must learn the piano how I wanted to learn.
From the age of 3.
That's right.
And that can put a lot of pressure on children. And I think that healthy parenting moves from trying to live your dreams through your children to surrendering your dreams to God and allowing His will instead of your will to be the guiding light of their destiny.
I think I'm guilty of that.
Really?
Of doing that at times, or probably a lot of times. Something that just keeps hitting me with Hanna is this thing about sacrificing and showing faithfulness, and the fact that when she sacrificed, it showed faithfulness, and then it promoted sacrifice and faithfulness. Or as you study out Samuel's life, it promotes it.
Yeah.
It really does promote it. And what you're saying also, the other way around, when we are sitting here trying to push things on our children that aren't really for them, that's probably going to promote something else.
Right.
Resentment and anger, or trying to get away. That's maybe why sometimes children leave before it's time, is that pressure.
We've probably got a bunch of young people listening to this thinking, why do I need to learn about parenting now? So far away. I used to think that too, and now every morning I wake up and see these big bright eyes and bulging cheeks just staring up at me, and I think, oh, I'm not ready. And even if it does seem decades away for you, maybe you need to sit down with mom or dad or both if you're lucky and start having those difficult conversations. Let them share with you the stories of what they sacrificed so that you could be where you are today. But parents, also take the time to listen. You cannot live vicariously through your children. It might be tough to hear this, but God didn't make your children to be like you. He made them to be like Him. So let's get talking. I'm Dean Cullinane, and you're listening to Why They Did That. A Christian without a Bible is like a soldier without a sword. You can't win a battle like that. So we would like to introduce you to Humble Lamb Bibles. Humble Lamb's goal is to present the Word of God in a way that compels people to read it, and thus connect with God more intimately. They make wonderfully crafted premium Bibles filled with cross-references, beautiful annotations, and many more built-in study tools. In addition to their King James Lion Bible, they are now excited to offer the new King James Shepherd Edition in a variety of beautiful colors. And get this, for every Bible they sell, they give another Bible away for free to those who can't afford one. And you can actually get 20% off when you use the code WTDT when you check out at humblelamb.com. I wasn't messing about with what I said before the break. Make a decision to sit down together with whatever mess of a family you may have and prayerfully and humbly converse about these things. I think you'll find that when we confess our sins to one another, there's real, genuine healing. And that's a Holy Spirit quote, by the way.
This call of motherhood, like what exactly are we doing as mothers?
Right.
So, human mammals, we are born dependent, and we must attach to survive.
Yeah.
We have to attach to survive. If a mammal is just let to go right after birth, I've seen videos of that elephant dropping out of the mother, and it just gets up and starts walking away.
Right.
And I mean, yes, it needs help, guidance, and everything, but really, if it watched, it could probably eat.
Yeah, it's pretty independent as soon as it leaves.
Right. So that's not going to happen.
Right.
You give birth, and you have to take that baby and keep it warm.
Right.
And start feeding. So this is called attachment, and it's actually a big deal right now. In society is to have a healthy attachment. And so we need to bond at least with one other human for survival. And mothers, first and foremost, we give birth, but we have to set up our child for success by having a healthy attachment. And that will happen when you first give birth, just feeding the child, and watching the child and being close. And, I think you attach when you are pregnant also. I
feel attached.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
because you're seeing growth and you're hearing a heartbeat,
right?
And you're talking to your child.
Yeah.
So there is attachment happening. And I think there's study about that too. It's pretty interesting. So yeah, this whole thing that we get to do. I mean, I can say motherhood because really the mother is carrying the baby, but the father does start attaching also. And you would expect a father to attach to the child also, but you do have that special mother-child bond. Yeah. So if you don't attach, though, there's a lot of problems. You can be not sure of yourself. You can be anxious. You can be worried. You can have these feelings that you don't even really know what they're about. You can have failure to thrive.
Right.
You just won't grow properly. So I'm sure there's a lot of problems I could name off, but we want to look at the healthy attachment. And I think we see that.
The idea of attachment also reminds me of a passage in the book of Ezekiel. In the 16th chapter, God essentially speaks to the prophet Ezekiel and gives him this picture of his relationship with Israel, where he says that Israel is basically the nation was given birth to almost as a child, but still attached by the cord, and God says there was no one there to cut the cord, and I found you there in the wild, in your blood, and he says, I picked you up, I took you in, I covered you with my skirt, I washed you with water, I anointed you with oil, I clothed you, and I raised you, and it really does give this beautiful picture almost as of God being in a mother role, like the taking care and the nurturing and helping the child, which in this case is Israel, to thrive and to not just survive. And it really is a beautiful picture of the state that God finds his people in, and then how he brings them to a position where they can go and live this bountiful life. Of course, with Israel, as we know all too often, they only really stay around God and attach to God long enough to become independent so they can go, as it says in Ezekiel, not my words, whoring after other nations and committing idolatry and adultery with other nations. But this idea of what a healthy attachment could look like, I think goes even beyond the the physical and the emotional, but even a spiritual
Mhm.
nature to this, and what it could look like if you do have a godly mother and hopefully a godly father, as Samuel would have had, where he can then go spiritually because he's attached and because he's thriving.
Right. And then you have to look at, though, even though you do have healthy attachment,
Mm-hmm.
you still have a point where that child does leave you,
Right.
and then they make their own decisions.
Yeah.
We would hope that they don't go off the deep end.
Right.
But we have to really admit, as a parent,
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with that. You do everything you possibly can.
Right.
There is a point where that child goes and makes their own
Mm-hmm.
decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the parenting role also.
Right. I feel like that's actually kind of the goal of parenting,
Mhm.
to get them to leave.
Correct.
Like not so much like, get out, but you are parenting as much as school is a preparation for, the work life or just the life.
Mhm.
So parenting it's a time of preparation.
Right.
And the idea, I think, should be to raise your child in such a way that when they are ready to leave and able to leave and mature enough,
Mhm.
Assuming that one, you've done your job well as a mother and a father, but also that they have done their job well in maturing and taking in the lessons.
Right.
That you do want them to go. That
Yes.
should be the goal, I think, so that they can then, as you mentioned, as they've witnessed and beheld the sacrifice
Mhm.
and the faithfulness,
Mhm.
they can then go out and start their own, and then pass on to them the lessons of sacrifice and faithfulness.
Right. So we see Hanna, she actually had to do that a lot quicker.
Yeah.
And I believe she did have healthy attachment, probably because of the sacrifice.
Mhm.
She knew that she was giving him up sooner.
Right.
And I think we as parents think we have 20 years, 18 years, and sometimes we'll probably get a little lazy in what we do or the time that we do. Oh, I'll have him here next summer, so I'll spend that time.
Yeah.
But Hanna did not do that because she only had a short time. We think it's 7 years. We're not sure.
Probably not to his teens, at least.
Right.
Yeah.
So we see her probably spending the time every single moment. I tell new mothers that all the time. Enjoy every single minute because it goes so fast.
Yeah. I'm saying that just by faith, but like right now, the pregnancy takes forever. But yes, I imagine having grown children.
But enjoy the pregnancy because in a little bit that's going to be gone. But enjoy the time that the baby's in the womb, and you can sit there and enjoy that time of the kicking and all that. But Hanna did that. She waited. It actually says in the Bible that they were going to go to sacrifice, and she actually stayed back. She says, "I'm going to wait until he's weaned before I take him." And I don't know. I'm just using my thoughts on that. Is probably she wanted to be at home with him and to make sure that she directed and guided him step by step in an intense environment because she was going to have to give him up.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably what she was doing. It could be for other reasons too, but she did have a healthy attachment in the way that she interacted with her child, knowing that she was going to have to give him up.
I wonder how different we would be as parents if we lived like that. If we treasured every moment and if we lived as though we were actually going to give them up soon. How many times would we then tell our children, "Oh, I don't have time for this, I'll do it tomorrow."
Right.
Or, "Yeah, we can play, but just 5 minutes, I've got to do these other things." I think if we had this mentality that Hanna had, like you said, every moment would just be just such a treasured time. I'm setting myself up here way too high, but that's at least how I imagine it right now.
Yeah, I have an example. When my children were little, I tried, for example, don't cry over spilled milk. I wanted to, when there was a problem like that, when they knock something down, I've read articles that when the milk is spilled on the ground, just get down and play in it with them. And, that goes so against what I wanted to do. But I tried to do that with things when things came our way to stop trying to make it a lesson of obedience or a lesson of cleanliness, but to really just enjoy the time that you have with them.
I feel like I should be taking notes.
Well, and one thing I used to do is let the kids cook. While I was cooking the meal, I would let them cook. And it was crazy because I let them pull things out of the refrigerator. I remember Mackenzie and Bailey bringing a big pot. They could bring a pot out and just set it on the floor in the kitchen. And they could go in there and get the ketchup bottle and squeeze it. I mean, they're not going to squeeze the whole thing, or I would control it. But I let them have fun while I was. Those are the great memories I have of engaging in the time that I had with my children. Yeah. Now, I didn't do that all the time because, and that's the other thing is when we get busier or when we have other goals other than this wanting to really connect with our kids, we kind of mess with that. But yeah, those are great memories that I have. Yeah. So I think we have to go back to this Hannah. Everything she must have done those first few years was to just to grow him and get him ready to live without her.
And that's why I believe there is no better cure for selfishness than parenting. There's something about a helpless, fragile life that is so completely dependent on you for survival that just connects you on a deeper level to the divine. When I look at my son and gaze into his eyes, I can't help but just think, I would do anything for you. I'd give up everything for you. That's exactly how our Heavenly Father looks at us. What's crazy to think is that we're entrusted with the most important work, raising a child to adulthood and to present a living argument that Christianity is truth, that God is truth, that He is love. The whole purpose of this work is so that they can leave us, so that they can then start that process all over for themselves. There isn't really a tangible reward for parents in that sense. Yet nothing could feel more fulfilling. Sacrifice, faithfulness, those are the double pillars of parenting. And also that we can just give it up so that others may be blessed. And so God loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son.
When I dreamt of being a mother, I made that position my identity like Hanna did. But I don't know whether I did it in the fact that how Hanna did when she said, I'm going to sacrifice. She's going to sacrifice Samuel to the Lord's work. I don't know if I did that. I don't know that I did that at first, but there were some things in our life that made that happen.
What kind of things?
So my husband and I were struggling in our marriage and in our family life, and I think it's because we were basically living like the world wanted us to live, and we weren't sacrificing our lives daily to God.
Had you already had the children by this point?
So yes, we did. We've had the children, and we were actually wanting to have the children experience, like you kind of said earlier, we wanted them to experience all these things that the world was giving us, like sports and ballet lessons and taekwondo. I can keep going. Oh yeah, and sailing lessons. We lived in North Carolina, and the kids got to have sailing lessons. Yeah. And we got to a point in our family life that we were drifting away from the identity of being Christians, and we were pretty much living. It's kind of strange because we weren't really, like, I don't know what you would call worldly or doing crazy things, but our lives were so busy doing those things that we were not connecting
to one another.
And then we decided that we needed to do things a little differently. And it happened that there was a health evangelist that came through.
Okay.
And this health evangelist, he was teaching us health principles and things like that, but it wasn't just what we were eating. It wasn't what we were, everything that we were doing. It was a combination of worship, of family time, of healthy habits. And when we started doing these things, it was interesting because it really changed our family unit.
Wow.
And it's so strange because we actually started being different than the world, and we started sacrificing what we thought was normal life.
Right.
And when we did that, God started giving us a kind of a new direction. So what happened was we decided to start a family ministry, and we ended up pulling the kids out of school, which was so countercultural, to what we were doing before.
How old were they at this time?
So they were, like 12 and, or 14, 12, and 10
Wow.
or something.
So they've been right in the thick of school.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And when we did that, we bought an RV, and we started putting out what we wanted to do. And small churches all over the place started asking us to come. So what we were going to do is we were going to come and do health seminars.
Kind of like what you had received from
this gentleman.
Mm.
So we were going to carry on what we've learned, because it was healing for our family, and we wanted to share that. We saw that, and we were going to be faithful to what we saw. And it actually, we did it kind of fast. So we were in the midst of it, but we were pretty much, gung ho with it. It was not like we just started these things. It was about a year or two after we had.
And the kids had embraced this fully as well.
They have. They had by this time. And I have a lot of stories to tell about that, but they really did. And I think they actually embraced it more because of the healing it did for Roger and myself. I got up in the morning. I would get up at 4 to have my personal devotions.
Good for you.
Yeah. I never had done that before. And it changed our whole atmosphere of our house, because I had my heart ready to start the day. Boy, it was amazing.
Wow.
And then we had family worship every morning, and we made breakfast together. The kids were helping me cook.
Squirting ketchup.
No more ketchup anymore. We were actually making our own ketchup at this point.
How about that?
No more squirting it. But they were old enough that they were actually doing it with me, which was wonderful. So when we started doing this travel, the kids got to be involved in it. They were doing their music for the program, and my husband, who's a physician, was doing the medical talks, and he was combining it with the spiritual. And I was right there by his side, being the mother, the practical part of it. Because a doctor can say something, but then a mother stands up and says, but this is how we do it. Means, yeah. So it was a perfect balance. Yes. And as we did that, our family was growing, but then we saw how we could heal others and help them. And Roger and I would do counseling with the couples, the families. After we did the health talks, we did one-on-ones, and we would teach them maybe how to schedule their life and make changes. And then we'd do a cooking class. And so we'd spend about a week and a half at these churches, and then we'd travel home, and my husband would work a few shifts and make some actual money. But we did this for 2 years.
Wow.
The most wonderful thing was how what God had done for us, this whole sacrifice and faithfulness breeds or promotes sacrifice and faithfulness. What happened was we decided to, the kids wanted to go to high school, and so we found a boarding school, and we went to visit it, and And when we went to visit the school, because we were looking at how we could live in the area, and my husband could work at a hospital nearby, and I wasn't thinking that I would work or anything.
Sure.
But I ended up, while we were there, my daughter came home and said that the girls' dean was not coming back the next year. And I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. I had done some deaning previously as a student missionary. And I was like, wow, I wonder what they think about me or whatever. So, well, by the time we visited there, I had interviewed and with my husband, and they thought of hiring me at this boarding school. Well, sure enough, they hired me. So I actually started working as a girls' dean. And I got to see mothers and fathers bring their young people
that's right.
to me so I could, get them through high school. But I saw them sacrificing, because who wants to send their kids away at high school? It's just so interesting, because I saw this go full circle.
Right.
I needed help. I changed and made changes in my life. I sacrificed. I was faithful to those things. And now God has given me the chance to bring in young girls into my dorm. And I was going to teach them those things that I had learned with our family. And it's just so amazing how God gave us that chance, and that I got to see parents do exactly what Hanna did, as far as bringing their children and laying them at my feet and saying, here they are. That's a huge, huge responsibility. And I take it as such that I had a lot of tears and stress during that time, because I was responsible for these children's lives. So it's just so amazing how God is faithful to us. And we see that with Hanna. It's interesting. After she gave Samuel away, she gave Samuel to the temple. She in chapter 2, she actually has this prayer of thankfulness. And in this prayer, it's like it's something when you sacrifice something and you see what God does with it, you just want to be so thankful. And I am so thankful. I think of problems that we've had in my life, struggles that we've had, but the story that God has given us, and the adventure that we've been on. I mean, thinking of all the travel we've done, and then coming to this school and working at this school, which was just an amazing thing. But we did that as a family. It's not like I just did that.
Yeah.
My kids were there, and my husband was there. We all had to do that as a family, and it was hard. Yeah. It's a hard life, because it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with these kids. But God strengthened us through what we did. In 1 Samuel 2, it starts with Hannah's song that she's so thankful, and she's showing an attitude of gratitude. And she saw how God she got to see how God worked through her son, Samuel, which, I mean, we can just go on and on, but we won't have time for that. But it's just a great read to see what Samuel did. And that's what my prayer is. My prayer is that I will have that faithful attitude of gratitude, because I still have some time to live, and I'm getting to see the wonderful things that my kids are going to be doing in their lives, and I'm excited. My last one is graduating from college in May, and she is moving forward. And we were just talking today. She just got her first job offer, and you know what? I'm not sad. Like we said before, I'm ecstatically happy. She's going to be moving away from me, far away to a very cold place. I don't know why, but she is going to do that, and I am so happy for her. And that's how I want to be. Yeah. I want to now watch my children have their adventures, and I just thank God that I'm able to do that.
He that hath an ear, let him hear. And you've just heard our latest show. If you'd like to hear more or hearken back to a previous episode, you can find us at whytheydidthat.org. We would love it if you could subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you could go as far as leaving a review, that would be amazing. You can follow us on your favorite social media accounts, Facebook or Instagram at whytheydidthat. And of course, YouTube, where you can actually watch this episode now as well as listen to it. So make sure to check that out too. Finally, if you would like to support this podcast and keep it running, please consider becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/WTDT. This show was produced by the supremely talented Paul Keefe and the video editing by Jonathan J.J. Jensen. And a special thank you to everyone else on the Why They Did That team. Once again, I'm Dean Cullinane, and you're listening to Why They Did That.